delay the inevitable is not in your best interest, and I don't believe you should do that.
I see.
Okay? That is an advice I give to a lot of people. Now, there are things that a lawyer can do, and it's becoming more and more true as there are so many foreclosures, and so there are more avenues opening up to resolutions. I mean, again, 10 years ago, a foreclosure was a foreclosure. There was really not much to talk about. But as the banks have begun to own more and more and more houses,
then they got to sell.
They don't want any more houses, and I think they're a little more open to alternative forms of resolution, restructuring a loan or something along those lines. It is helpful to have a lawyer negotiating that for you. Now, another thing that a lawyer can do, a foreclosure is a highly technical lawsuit, and there's a lot of ways to mess it up. I mean, from the plaintiff's side, from the bank side.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of mistakes that they can make, and I find a significant number of foreclosures have a technical error in them, and a technical error that only a lawyer is going to find. Now, people should not misunderstand what I'm saying. A technical error is not going to make the foreclosure go away.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to mean that your house isn't foreclosed upon. It's going to delay the process, but it's also going to give you a little leverage in your negotiating with the bank, because they don't want to go through fixing that problem. And so it creates a little bit of bargaining power. And that's something that a lawyer can do for you. And then finally, a lawyer can delay the process, to be perfectly honest with you. You know, I mean, it takes a while. People, that's another thing I don't think people understand about foreclosure. People kind of, I think, equate foreclosure in their minds with eviction.
I see.
And they know that an eviction happens pretty quickly. Okay? That's not true of a foreclosure. A foreclosure takes a long time. And frankly, just by your lawyer filing an answer, it delays the process by months. And sometimes, it's unfortunate, but sometimes my advice to a client has to be, ultimately you're not going to keep this from happening. You're not. Ultimately you're going to lose this home, and ultimately you're going to be out of this home. But by doing this, this, and this, I can make that process, instead of 3 months, 9 months, and give you that much more time to put some money together to find another place for your family to live.
You know, Steve, you're really putting some flesh on the bones of what the judge said last time. And I think it goes back to the point I made earlier, is that most people don't get sued. Most people don't understand anything about a lawsuit. I mean, it just doesn't happen to everybody. Albeit we're told we're the most litigious nation in the world, and maybe we are, but the average guy doesn't have much encounter with the court that way. He might get a speeding ticket or something like that. The judge said, Judge Kimber said, his best advice to anybody who gets into a foreclosure is do not ignore this.
Oh, goodness, no.
Well, sometimes people get a bill in the mail that they can't pay, Steve. So what they do is, then they're not bad people. They just don't pay it that month in hopes that maybe next month it'll be better. But I guess there's a technical point. There is something called an answer to a lawsuit. And if you don't file that answer, I guess I'd like for you to tell the folks what's going to happen.
Yeah, that's one of the most frustrating things for a lawyer, frankly, is to have someone who really needs their help come into their office. There's an avenue that I could help them. You know, maybe it's just delaying the process, or maybe it's working out something with the bank. But I've lost that opportunity because they waited too long to come see me. If you don't file an answer or get an extension from the court to file an answer within the time frame that's allowed by law, which is 28 days from after you've been served, you lose your right to contest it.
I see. Well, Let's go back to Pebble for a minute here. We covered a lot of ground here today, actually. But not only did Pebble have her house foreclosed on once, she had her house foreclosed on twice.
Yeah.
How could that be?
Well, because when you rework a loan or work out a deal to get a foreclosure dismissed, it doesn't make the mortgage go away. And the mortgage is still there, and it still has to be paid. And unfortunately, Pebble had the same thing happen to her again. She was in the hospital. They missed some payments. Because of the first foreclosure, I think the bank, usually the bank doesn't file a foreclosure until you've missed, usually, as a rule of thumb, 3 payments. I think in Pebble's case, they filed after 1 in the second time.
I see.
And they don't have to wait for 3. They just do. As a point of fact, if your mortgage is late, even if it's